In the grand square, before the royal palace, a sea of people gathers under a crisp autumn sky. The occasion is a ceremonial tribute steeped in tradition, marking a historic moment of national pride. Flags flutter in the breeze, their colors vivid against the stone facade of the palace. The crowd, dressed in formal attire, stands shoulder to shoulder, their faces etched with anticipation. Dignitaries, veterans, and citizens alike have come to honor the past and celebrate resilience. As the first notes of the national anthem rise, a hush falls over the square. Every soul rises to their feet in unison, a collective gesture of respect and unity. Heads are held high, hands placed over hearts, and eyes fixed on the royal standard waving atop the palace. The anthem's solemn melody carries through the air, binding the crowd in shared reverence. But one figure remains seated. In the front row of honored guests, an elderly man in a weathered wheelchair does not stand. His hands rest quietly in his lap, his face calm but unreadable. Whispers ripple through the crowd, some curious, others judgmental. Is this defiance? Disrespect? The anthem continues, and the man's stillness becomes conspicuous. Then, slowly, he moves. With trembling hands, he grips the armrests of his wheelchair. His frail frame tenses as he pulls himself upward, inch by inch. The effort is immense. His breathing labored, his arms shaking under the strain. The crowd begins to notice, eyes turn toward him, and a murmur spreads. He has no legs. Yet, with sheer will, he lifts himself to a standing position, balancing on the strength of his arms alone. The square falls silent, save for the anthem's final notes. Thousands of eyes are fixed on this solitary figure, a man who stands not on feet, but on resolve. The moment is electric, a testament to something greater than ceremony, a defiance of limitation, a tribute to sacrifice. This is Jack Monroe, and this is his story. Jack Monroe is not a man who seeks the spotlight. At 86, he lives a quiet life in a modest care home on the outskirts of Oxford, surrounded by rolling hills and the soft hum of rural England. His room is simple: a bed, a small table, and a single photograph framed on the wall. A faded image of a young man in uniform, standing tall with comrades in a desert far from home. That young man was Jack, a soldier who served in North Africa during World War II under the reign of King George VI. Born in 1939 in a working-class neighborhood of Birmingham, Jack grew up in a world on the brink of war. His father, a factory worker, instilled in him a sense of duty, while his mother taught him resilience through her own quiet strength. At 18, Jack enlisted, eager to serve his country. He was sent to the deserts of North Africa, where he fought alongside the Allied forces against Rommel's Afrika Korps. Those years shaped him, hardened him, but they also broke him. In 1942, during a patrol near El Alamein, Jack's unit was ambushed. A landmine exploded beneath their vehicle, killing 2 of his comrades instantly. Jack survived, but the blast claimed both his legs below the knees. He was 23 years old, evacuated to a field hospital. He endured months of grueling recovery, his body healing, but his spirit tested. The war ended, but for Jack, the battle never truly ceased. After returning home, Jack faced a world that wasn't built for men like him. Accessibility was a foreign concept in post-war Britain, and pity often outweighed opportunity. Yet Jack refused to be defined by his loss. He learned to navigate life in a wheelchair, worked as a clerk in a local council office, and married his childhood sweetheart, Eleanor, who saw the man beyond the injury. They raised a daughter, and later a grandson, who became the light of Jack's later years. Now, decades later, Jack is a widower, his body frail but his mind sharp. His days are spent reading history books, tending to a small garden at the care home, and sharing stories with younger residents. He is not a man of grand gestures, but his presence carries weight, a quiet dignity earned through a life of perseverance. When the invitation to the royal ceremony arrived, Jack was hesitant. The letter, embossed with the royal crest, described him as a symbol of triumph over adversity. Jack scoffed at the phrase. "I'm no symbol," he told his grandson, Thomas. "I'm just a man who kept going." But Thomas insisted, and Jack agreed, not for himself, but for the memory of those who didn't come home. The ceremony is a meticulously orchestrated event held annually to honor the nation's veterans and commemorate its history. The royal palace looms over the square, its centuries-old stone walls a backdrop to the proceedings. The household guard, resplendent in scarlet tunics and bearskin hats, stands in perfect formation, their rifles gleaming in the sunlight. Their faces are impassive, their movements precise, a living embodiment of discipline and tradition. The crowd is a cross-section of society, politicians in tailored suits, families waving small flags, and veterans adorned with medals that tell stories of their own. The air is thick with anticipation as the ceremony begins. A military band plays a series of patriotic tunes, followed by speeches from dignitaries. The mood is one of pride, tempered by reverence, a reminder of the sacrifices that built the nation. Jack sits among the honored guests, a section reserved for veterans and their families. His wheelchair is positioned near the front, giving him a clear view of the palace steps where the royal family will soon appear. He wears a simple suit, his old service medals pinned to his chest. His grandson, Thomas, sits beside him, a young man in his 20s with a kind face and a quiet pride in his grandfather. As the national anthem begins, the crowd rises as one. Jack remains seated, his hands folded in his lap. He feels the weight of eyes upon him, some curious, others confused. He ignores them. The anthem is not just a song to him. It is a reminder of the men who stood beside him, the ones who never returned. He closes his eyes briefly, their faces flashing in his memory. Then, something shifts within him. He cannot explain it later, not fully, but it feels like a call. His hands move to the armrests of his wheelchair. His fingers, gnarled by age, grip the metal tightly. Slowly, painfully, he begins to lift himself. His arms tremble, his breath comes in short gasps, but he does not stop. Inch by inch, he rises, his torso straightening, until he is upright, supported only by his arms and the frame of the chair. The crowd begins to notice. A woman in the row behind gasps softly. A child tugs at his father's sleeve, pointing. The anthem continues, but the square grows quieter. The collective attention shifting to this lone figure. Jack's face is set, his eyes fixed on this flag above the palace. He is not standing for himself. He is standing for them, his comrades, his country, his past. By the time the anthem ends, Jack is fully upright. The silence that follows is profound, broken only by the faint rustle of the wind. For a moment, time seems to pause. Then, slowly, Jack lowers himself back into his chair, his chest heaving. Thomas reaches over, placing a hand on his grandfather's shoulder. No words are needed. Across the square, a young guardsman stands at attention. Private William Harper is 22, barely a year into his service with the household guard. Like his comrades, he has been trained to embody stoicism. His role is clear: stand still, eyes forward, no matter the circumstance. Distractions are forbidden. Emotion is a luxury he cannot afford. But as Jack rises, William's eyes betray him. He catches the movement in his peripheral vision, a flicker of motion that draws his attention. Against every instinct, he turns his head just slightly to see there, in the front row, is an old man in a wheelchair, defying the limits of his body to stand. William's breath catches. He knows the stories of men like Jack. His own grandfather served in the war, but seeing this moment unfold is different. It is raw, human, undeniable. The turn of his head is subtle, but it is enough. A ripple of surprise passes through the crowd. The guards are not supposed to move. Their stillness is part of the ceremony's gravitas, a symbol of unwavering duty. Yet William's small act of humanity, a glance of respect, of awe, breaks the mold. For a fleeting moment, He is not a guard, but a young man witnessing something extraordinary. Unbeknownst to William, a French tourist in the crowd is filming the ceremony on her phone. Her lens captures Jack's struggle, the crowd's reaction, and, by chance, William's subtle turn. The footage is shaky but clear, a 90-second clip that will soon change everything. The tourist, Marie Dubois, posts the video online with a simple caption, "A moment I'll never forget." She has no idea what she has set in motion. By evening, the clip has spread across social media platforms like wildfire, shared first on X. It gains traction within minutes. The image of Jack rising, his face etched with determination, resonates deeply. The sight of the young guardsman breaking protocol adds a layer of humanity that captivates viewers. Comments pour in, first dozens, then thousands. This is what courage looks like. I'm crying. That guard's glance says it all. He stood for all of us. Within hours, the video surpasses 10 million views. News outlets pick up the story, and soon it is broadcast on television screens worldwide. In cafes in Paris, living rooms in Sydney, and offices in New York, people watch and share. The clip transcends borders, a universal story of resilience and respect. The royal family takes notice. In an unprecedented gesture, the Queen pins a handwritten letter to Jack, delivered to his care home by a palace courier. The letter is brief, but heartfelt. Mr. Monroe, your courage today moved a nation. You stood not only for yourself, but for millions who cannot. On behalf of our country, thank you. The letter is read aloud to Jack by Thomas, who struggles to keep his voice steady. Jack listens quietly, his expression unchanged. Fancy words, he mutters. But there is a softness in his eyes. Private William Harper, the guardsman, faces an inquiry for breaking protocol, but instead of punishment, he receives a commendation. His commanding officer, in a rare moment of leniency, cites his instinctive humanity as a credit to the guard. William is stunned, later admitting to a reporter, "I didn't think, I just felt." The clip continues to circulate, inspiring tributes and discussions. Schools show it in assemblies, prompting students to write essays about courage. Veterans organizations use it to raise awareness for their cause. In a world often divided, Jack's stand becomes a rare point of unity. A week after the ceremony, a local journalist visits Jack at the care home. The world wants to know more about the man behind the moment. Jack agrees to a short interview, though he insists it be brief. "I'm no hero," he says before the recorder is even turned on. Heroes don't come home. Seated in his small garden, Jack speaks slowly, his voice gravelly but clear. He recounts his time in North Africa, not the battles, but the men. He talks of his friend Charlie, who shared his last cigarette before the ambush, of Lieutenant Hayes, who carried Jack to safety after the explosion, of the countless faces he can still see, frozen in time. When asked why he stood during the anthem, Jack pauses. "It wasn't for me," he says finally. "I stood for them. I lost my legs. But they lost everything. If I can still stand, however I can, it's because of them." The journalist presses further, asking about the viral clip and the Queen's letter. Jack shrugs. "People make a fuss. I just did what felt right." He gestures to his wheelchair. "This doesn't stop me from living." Never has. Thomas, who has been listening quietly, speaks up. His voice cracks as he says, "Granddad, you didn't stand alone that day. We were all with you." He reaches for Jack's hand, and the old man squeezes it tightly. For the first time, Jack's eyes glisten. The interview is published, and Jack's words strike a chord. His humility, paired with his strength, deepens the public's admiration. He receives letters from strangers, children, soldiers, amputees, each thanking him for showing what it means to endure. Jack reads every one, though he never responds. "What do you say to that?" he asks Thomas, shaking his head. A year later, the nation gathers again for the annual ceremony. Jack, now 87, is too frail to attend. His health has declined, and he spends most days in bed, his strength fading, but his story remains vivid in the public's mind. The square is filled with familiar faces, including Private William Harper, now a corporal, standing prouder than ever. As the ceremony concludes, Thomas steps forward. In a quiet moment before the crowd disperses, he approaches the palace steps. In his hands is a small box containing Jack's old gardening gloves, worn and stained from years years of use. He places the box on the steps, along with a handwritten card. The words are simple, but powerful. He stood without legs, so we could stand with pride. The gesture is captured by photographers and shared widely. It becomes a symbol of Jack's legacy. Not just his stand, but the spirit it embodied. The gloves are later preserved in a national museum, displayed alongside artifacts of war and resilience. A plaque tells Jack's story, ensuring it will not be forgotten. Jack passes away 3 months later, surrounded by family. His funeral is small, as he wished, but the news spreads, and tributes pour in. Veterans salute him as a brother. Leaders call him an inspiration. Ordinary people remember him as a reminder that strength comes not from the body, but from the heart. In the years that follow, Jack's story endures. The clip is shown in documentaries, taught in schools, and referenced in speeches. It becomes a touchstone for discussions about sacrifice, duty, and the human spirit. Each anniversary of the ceremony, a moment of silence is observed in the square, not just for veterans, but for Jack Monroe, the man who stood when he had no legs to stand on. His legacy is not in the medals he earned or the letter from the Queen. It is in the countless lives he touched, the hearts he moved, and the reminder he left behind that even in our brokenness, we can rise